Psst. Hey kid, you want to impress your friends? This is probably my most used bass patch when it comes to any kind of mono synthesizer. I've been using this same patch pretty much on multiple mono synths throughout the years. It sounds better on some, sounds worse on others. It's like I said a second ago, jokingly but kind of seriously, it is a really easy way to impress your friends, for the lack of a better term, especially if they're not into synthesis. But it's a really simple bass patch. I mean, check this out. This is getting tangled up here. The reason I like this patch is because if I go to an initialized sound, the reason I like this patch is because it just is it's a very satisfying sound. It kind of has this funky bass, but it can also be acidy and it can also be very subtle. Personally, you can choose whatever wave shape you want. I really like pulse width. So again, on any bass synth, or any synth for that matter, I can do this on Peak, which is a poly synth. On any synth, it's really, really simple to do. Choose your shape. Right now we got pulse width. I want to go down an octave. And turn the filter down. Resonance up a little bit. Actually, you know what? Let's hear it without the resonance for a sec. Turn the resonance up. And then this is probably the most important part. Majority of the time, hopefully, your synthesizer has an amp envelope. Once in a while, your amp envelope gets tied to the modulation envelope. It might be like envelope 1, right? And that will be what opens up your amp envelope as well as any other kind of modulation you might have on your synthesizer. Luckily for me, the Pro 3, I guess I got to say this too, technically I kind of work for Sequential now because I work for Novation and that's owned by Focusrite, and Focusrite bought Sequential. So there's that, but I've had this forever, way longer than I even knew we were going to buy the company. So what I'm trying to say here is on the Pro 3, I actually have a separate filter envelope. And a lot of synthesizers have a separate modulation envelope. So this is really important to keep the two separate. Keep your amp envelope and your filter envelope separate. The reason being is I can hold this, set my sustain to full, and this won't be affecting my filter cutoff, right? I can then turn up how much our filter envelope is going to be going to our filter. This is the important part. To me, that's super satisfying. On the Pro 3, it already kind of has a default envelope shape, but we can start this from scratch as if yours doesn't. So I'm going to turn all of these down, and it should technically not do anything. It might do like a little pop. Yeah, it does a little pop. Right? This is kind of important as well. So for the most part, right now, we've gotten to a point where this is the bass patch I always use, right? It's just literally this. With a little less of this, a little less of that. Maybe a little less decay. And you kind of play with this to kind of get a different vibe. If you want more of like a bass upright sound, you maybe add a little more decay. What we're changing right now is how quickly this filter whips up and comes back down every time we play a note. Okay, so what I want us to focus on here is sustain, and just kind of take a second to really understand what sustain is and what it's doing. Sustain is a very powerful tool when it comes to envelopes, because right now, like I said a second ago, we're judging how much this filter moves and at which speed it's going to move every time we play a note, right? We can actually figure out how far up this filter will whip up. And we can then fine tune that if you want to get super nitty gritty with this. And I kind of like doing this because it's really fun. So check this. Our sustain is the value at which when we press a note, where our filter or where whatever value we are sending this to is going to land, where the note will sustain itself at. So to show you really quick, our filter whips up and then lands here. But I can use this as a tool to figure out where I want the attack and decay stages to whip up to. Because attack and decay, attack will always go to, let's just call it 100%. you can say that this is going to go wham and then come back down. No matter where your sustain is, this will blow past your sustain. You can actually see it here in the waveform. Our sustain is saying we're going to land here or here or here or here, but no matter what I do, our attack and decay will always go up to its max amount. And you can change this max amount sort of by changing the amount as a whole. But instead of going back and forth and hitting the note a bunch of times to figure out where exactly this will whip to, you can get really nerdy with this. Turn your attack and decay all the way off, turn your sustain all the way up, and now we can just use the amount knob or your depth amount to figure out where exactly the max amount our filter will whip up to. Does that make sense? Here, let's put it to practice. Let's say I want this to almost get to the top. Our sustain is up, and we'll start turning up our amount. Maybe I want it to be there. And what I mean by I want it to be there is I want our attack to ramp up to that point and our decay to fall down from that point and hit that. Basically, bam, and then come back down. If I turn our sustain down and our decay up and our attack up, you'll hear that it goes up to that amount and then comes back down. Wow. So we can use this as our friend to figure out where this is actually going to land. On the filter, it might not be that important, but when it comes to modulating pitch or FM amounts, you can make sure the attack hits a very specific amount and then falls back down. So take a second and just have some fun with sustain, attack, and decay and figure out where they're actually landing. And the same can be said for negative amounts. Right? So now it's basically the inverse of whatever this shape is. So if we turn our filter up, you hear it starts low and comes back up. We can hear it even more drastically with our attack up. Right? And we can figure out where this is going to land because our sustain is now the opposite. When it's all the way down, that means our filter is all the way open. So we can say, land right here. And if you're wondering why some notes don't have that effect, it's because there's not retrigger turned on. If I turn retrigger on, you can hear now it's retriggering that whole entire amp envelope cycle, or filter envelope cycle. Right? So this is kind of like the most basic bass patch, but it's so fun and easy to use because, again, let's just do it really fast because I do this in every song and it's so easy to do that I don't even have it saved as a patch because it's so quick to make. Initialize patch, pulse width, octave down, filter down, resonance up, turn this up a little bit. Right? We went from this to down, filter up, resonance up. Maybe down more and off. And then you just start playing with a filter. Or you want this to be a bit more squelchy, turn the resonance up. Maybe you want to hear a bit more of the resonance. Our decay is whipping that down a little too quick. We'll turn that decay up. Maybe we want it to be even more dark and more contrasty between the bright rip at the top to the filter being really low. We'll turn our filter down and turn our amount up. And let's see, is there, oh, I have this set on a weird mode. Forget this. I'm not even gonna try changing this setting. It took me too long to get here. But if you have a filter or a sequence playing, you can just start playing with this, lowering the resonance, lowering the filter amount, bringing this up, and it kind of just starts becoming this performative. And then start doing negative stuff, not to yourself or your mind, but to the synth. Bring it back over. Just with like 3 knobs, you're changing the amp, the filter envelope being sent to the filter cutoff, and the resonance. That's it. It's a really simple bass patch, and it's so just bread and butter. I've been using this sound for years now, and I use it all the time, and I've been wanting to make a video on it. But I was like, it's such a boring sound, but for whatever reason, I keep coming back to it. So I was like, okay, maybe there's something here enough that I can, maybe there's a reason why I'm using this so much. Maybe it's just one of those good sounds. Maybe this is maybe it's not. This is all personal taste, right? But to me, this is kind of like, I always go back to this analogy where a band is always using the same guitar, same bass, and same drums to make albums and albums and albums worth of music. To me, this is kind of like my dedicated bass guitar. It's enough moving the tone around that I can kind of get some variation, but it's kind of still in the same ballpark. Anyway, yo, appreciate you a lot. And yeah, I hope you found this video helpful. Go make some cool synth patches. Let me know if you have a synth that doesn't have any of those settings on there, or does that weird amp is tied to the filter cutoff. Some of the cheaper synths end up doing that, but it's still doable. Just make sure you have it separate. And the reason I want you to have it separate is so that you have more control over the sound, the amplitude, and the filter movement. I want them to be disconnected because that's where cool variations start to happen. And yeah, if you want to support the channel, by all means, I sell some merch here, but you kicking it is more than enough. And yeah, until next week, I hope to see you again. And you already know the drill. Share the love, share the knowledge. Knowledge is power. Peace. Actually, you know what? I got some drums. All right, time to embarrass myself. Later. I need a sequencer. My brain can't compute. Change it up to something easy. Back. Yeah. I'm out of here.